What's going on, guys? Welcome into episode number 40 of the Ask Tony Show. Thank you so much for being here once again. Another day, another awesome guest, guys. I'm so excited about today's topic because it's one that honestly I have not covered on my show, I think at all, but it's one that I'm heavily involved in. And this guy that you're all going to meet today, I've had a lot of conversations about different topics with him. I was just having a conversation with him about the filibuster last night. And so he's a great dude. He's extremely educated. He's an activist. He loves politics. And he's from my Hispanic community. So I'm so honored that he decided to be on my show. Spencer Barrera from El Salvador. Thank you so much for being here, my brother.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure for me to be here as well. I'm honored to be a guest on your show, and just give a little bit of my personal experience and my knowledge to everyone that wants to know a little bit more, or why am I involved in politics and how they can make change in their own homes and their own communities. So I'm excited as well.
Yeah. 100%. And one of the things that I really gravitated towards to bring Spencer onto the show is that, I feel like in today's kind of political landscape, there's a lot of people that kind of shy away from that conversation because it's just so loaded with emotions. But I noticed that, you are very outspoken and you are very, you're very involved and you have very strong opinions and you voice those opinions. And I think that that's important, whatever side of the aisle you're on, because I think that, there's so many people out there, especially young people, that are just sick of politics, right? We've, whether with the whole Trump thing, or if you're a little bit older with Obama, Bush, like there's so many people that kind of feel like it's a bad thing. You shouldn't talk about that. But it is, in my opinion, one of, if not the most important topics that actually affects our lives in the day-to-day. So talk to us a little bit about kind of how you got started, where you kind of started to pique your interest, and how you kind of started the process of really learning the issues so that you can now be a voice for your community.
Thank you so much for the space, and I feel like initially, I think it's actually a taboo that the same establishment, has created for us. Because, for instance, you always hear, for example, never talk about politics on your first date, never talk about politics with your family. So those quotes, or those things just create some sort of a shadow over those topics. And at the end of the day, politics are involved in every aspect of our lives. So it goes from your workplace to your home, to your community, to those ones that are near you, maybe not even the ones that are near you, but your compatriots, from any coming way of life. And I think that for me is not hard because I have decided to make that a priority in my life, always to voice what I feel, the way that I think, the way, or amplify those voices of those people that their voices might be ignored or withheld for X or Y reason, and I have that privilege, I feel like imagine we come from a background, as you mentioned, I'm from the Hispanic community, and a little bit of my background and where I'm from El Salvador. I moved to the United States 6 years ago. And in my youth, we don't necessarily, in the Latin community, or on the Hispanic community, we are not necessarily that involved in politics. We maybe just kind of go by ear of what our parents teach us. And I mean, I feel like that's something that I grew up with after I served my mission. And once I came here, I started to see a little bit more of the true side of politics. And I feel like that's the reason why it's just easier to, quote unquote, disconnect from politics, or avoid that topic, because that's the easiest thing, But
no, 100%. I completely agree. And again, it's kind of, you said it, right? It is part of our everyday life, and it dictates the way we do things, the things we have access to, the freedoms we have or we don't have. And so I think that right now we're in a very dangerous place where there's a stigma on both sides. On one side, there's, like you mentioned, you shouldn't even talk about it, right? Because if you bring up the topic, there's going to be problems and you're going to fight, and nobody wants that. So don't even talk about it. But if we do that, then we don't get educated, we don't have meaningful conversations, and we just leave the people in power here's kind of how I see it. If the people don't engage in the process because there's this stigma that it's a bad thing or that it's just going to bring you drama in your life, then in my opinion, that gives the people up top just total liberty to do whatever they want, because the actual people don't want to engage. But then you have the other side, which is, for example, people like you that are very vocal, that, voice their opinions. And actually, I wanted to ask you, the stigma kind of is you can't talk to those people because they're going to freak out and they're not going to listen, and they're just going to like get mad at you and they're going to offend you. But one of the things that I really admire about you is that you're willing to have the conversation, right? In a respectful way. Like I said, just yesterday, we were talking about the filibuster. We kind of disagree a little bit on that point, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So the point is to get to a place where you can have the conversation where both sides feel that they're not going to be attacked for their beliefs. And the fact that, we might disagree on a topic, it doesn't make you evil. It doesn't make me evil. It's just a difference of opinion where we can learn from each other. So I guess the specific question that I wanted to ask you is, have you faced kind of, hate on social media, hurtful comments from you being so vocal about your beliefs? And if so, how do you handle that?
Great question. And I feel that I'm actually blessed on that matter, because the opinions that I voice, and I've always been kind of like selective, I would say, on social media. All my accounts are private just because I don't feel the necessity, to make them public. And maybe because I'm kind of a little private when it comes to like my family, and that is initially why I had social media, or I created social media. But thankfully, I have never come up with any indeed like hate speech whatsoever. I've always received feedback, or different points of view from different friends or acquaintances. And for me, the most important thing, Tony, is we can disagree on solutions, and that's totally fine. And I feel like there's two parties for that reason, and but my solutions could be good for a certain targeted, a specific group of people, and maybe yours would have maybe a different approach, or it's going to take a little longer, or it's going to be faster, etc. So those are the things that we can create on dialogue and an argument to see what are the best solutions, But when it comes to things that are inherently evil, or maybe not evil, but what is the word that I'm trying to find? Ethical. When it comes to anything related to civil rights or human rights, I think that the conversation on those specific topics, there's no necessity on disagreeing. I think in both sides of the aisle, we agree that we want to just do better. There are things that we need to change, and that's, I think, one of the most important things when it comes to like disagreements. We can disagree on solutions, but we cannot disagree on someone else's pain, or struggles. That's something
I love that. And I think that is absolutely key, and that's kind of a fundamental principle of debate. You can't have a debate if you don't agree on the foundational question of the debate. Otherwise, you're just talking about different things. So we can disagree on how to get from A to B, but we have to agree that the journey from A to B is necessary and has to happen. And so I agree with that 100%. And so, as kind of mentioning that a lot of young people are maybe afraid to voice their opinion, or they're told not to, or they're just completely, sick of politics. What keeps you interested when, just yesterday, you were telling me that it's this game, and it just seems like there's so many things wrong with it, and it's such a broken system. And, in many cases, I feel the exact same way. I know a lot of people feel that way. So what keeps you in it versus taking the approach that a lot of other people take of just saying, you know what, screw this. I don't need this in my life. I don't even care. It doesn't matter. And they just kind of go on with their day to day and they just forget about it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a decision that is personal, and I know like every way of people as well, they mention me, we have talked about it with other friends and sometimes even colleagues, from work or my partner, etc. Sometimes people don't get like completely involved in something because it might not. So politics are depressing. They're like infuriating sometimes. There's a lot of emotion involved into things. There's a lot of frustration. When a bill is not passed, when you see that your fellow co-patriots, for example, people from El Salvador immigrating to the United States, families being separated, kids kept in cages, etc. So those are the things that, for instance, it can either encourage you or discourage you of not taking a step forward and continue to push that agenda.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that I am in such privileged position, and I might not even have too much, but I'm in a privileged position where I have a home, I have a roof over my head, I don't have to be worrying about my status here in the United States at the moment, So those are the things that I keep in my mind and that help me continue to, even if it's discomfort that I feel, or it's frustration or it's discouragement that I feel because nothing, quote unquote, is changing. Imagine how the people that are actually going through those struggles are feeling,
Yeah.
So if we don't, if we're not willing to just at least, express ourselves and push that agenda, then I don't know what we're really doing.
No, it's absolutely true. And that kind of goes back to the fear that I have is that if the majority of the population just doesn't even care or is to the point where they're sick of it and they're like, whatever, it's broken anyway, then it's never going to get fixed, right? Because the way to fix it is for people to actually get out there and, spread their message and actually start to change things. And so, but one of I think the main challenges when it comes to talking about politics is actually getting the right information. And so something that I have struggled with is, for example, there'll be a piece of news, whatever event happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll watch different networks. So for example, like I'll watch CNN, which is a little bit more left leaning. I'll watch Fox, which is a little bit more conservative. So I'll watch both networks talk about the exact same event and it's completely different. It's night and day. It's like they're not even talking about this same event. And so because those are kind of the mainstream, media sources that people look to, it seems to me that one of the biggest challenges for a lot of folks is actually learning what are the facts without that kind of, partisan bias thrown in like a lot of these media outlets do. And so how have you kind of navigated that? Are there certain sources that you prefer to others? And what do you recommend for young people who would like to get educated, but don't want to be brainwashed by the quote unquote, network's opinion and that the way that they kind of spin things to make you think in a certain way?
Definitely. And I mean, to this point, I have actually done a lot of research about it. I'm going to send you some links also of some articles that are in regards to these topics, how we're going to be able to recognize what is actually the point of view that we're taking. When it comes to like big corporate media, when it comes to Fox News, CNN, those are big corporations. What they're trying to do is and that's another topic that maybe in another time you can cover, is manufacturing consent. They own the means of productions and they have
I love that. Let me pause you real quick. You just said manufacturing consent. I understand what that means. Yeah. What does that mean? Because that phrase you said right there is golden. That you nailed it on the head. What does that mean? Manufacturing consent.
is exactly what the media does. Like these big corporations, they give you their point of view. That's why also on news and media, it's really important verbiage and tone when it's relaying any type of news, because this is what creates, for instance, if I am a person that loves coffee, and I want to get the best experience, I'm going to go to someone that knows
Mhm.
whatever company, or news outlets that you're watching. They have the best interest for you, but at the end of the day, no, it's not like that. They're just pushing an agenda, and they're owned by billionaires. They're going to
Mhm.
find a way, to make you think a certain
Mhm.
way. And it's just like also social media, like your phone, your
Mhm.
Facebook, Instagram, etc. And I feel like the thing that you have to do personally, and I really love one of your videos that you were doing recently, that information is not just going to come knock on your door. You have to do this yourself. And for instance, when it comes to any news that are big, I prefer, for instance, I have gotten a lot really into Twitter because it's just more like a fast, or I would say more updated social media where I can get the news like instantly. So I use that tool a lot. I also use, for example, independent media outlets that are global. For example,
In real
Associated
time, yes.
Press,
Uh-huh.
Democracy Now! Is another company that focus a lot of being not biased on any certain specific topics. Just given the facts. And I feel like I you have to do your due diligence. Like there's gonna be a new one news, and that's what they do. For instance, you see a meme or just a quote on Instagram. Maybe the quote itself, it was taken from a speech and it was taken out of context, and now you already have a different idea of this political person. So we don't have to be really prone just to like jump into conclusions and be like, oh, this is what this
Mhm.
person said, this is what this person did. We need to know context as well. And I mean, I understand that that's the reason why not many people will be involved into this, because they might not have the time to be able to do it. Right now, that is the era of information, and we have everything in the palm of our hands. It just depends how much you're willing to do, for those causes and for your
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that one of the main problems is people
uh-huh.
feel like they automatically feel like they're being lied to, which goes back to kind of what you were saying before, that these big outlets, they're not trying to inform you, they're trying to persuade you. And it's two very different things. One thing is me trying to give you info, and the other thing is trying to shape your interpretation of that info, maybe leaving out this little bit or like exaggerating this other little bit to make it seem like it happened a certain way when maybe it's not that way. And for me, it's been so interesting to literally see, again, CNN reports one event one way and Fox reports a completely different way. And so I kind of sit there for a
Yeah.
second and I'm like, well, what actually happened? Right? Like, what's the actual info? But what you say is critical. We either have to find better sources that have more of the mission to inform versus to persuade, or we have to go a little bit deeper. We have to question and not just believe headlines. For example, I can't tell you how many times people will tell me, hey, did you hear about this? And I'm like, did you read the article? And they're like, no, but the headline said that
Yeah.
this. And I'm like, bro, like, you didn't even read the article. Does that make sense? Even if the article isn't accurate, they didn't even read it. So I think that education here plays a tremendous role. But
Yeah,
in my
and I
opinion, the
feel
media
when it comes to that
is a
as
big
well,
problem.
Tony, because there's so much information, people, it's hard for them to, for instance, I don't know, in the first day of inauguration, how many bills were passed, how many things that the Trump administration did were reversed on the Biden administration,
Mhm.
and because of there's so many bills that were passed, it's hard for a regular
You
human
can't
being,
keep up.
that exactly. So, but for instance, in this case, what I would maybe challenge people to do is
you're not going to be able to understand on or to have a really strong opinion on all the topics, because there are too
Too
many.
much.
We have immigrations, we have women's rights, we have American imperialism, we have white supremacy right now, we have the police. There's so many topics.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I would just highly suggest for anyone that is willing to get involved, just to choose one topic. Choose one topic that you want to be very involved, very vocal about. And it's beautiful to see how all those topics are interconnected.
Sure.
And that's how you're going to be able to maybe create your own opinion, or you're going to see, oh, okay, maybe this party is the one that like associates or affiliates closer to home, because of my standings, because of my own research. And at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a party affiliations. At the end of the day, I'm going to, no matter if the person, or if my major or my senator is Republican or Democrat or independent, I'm going to hold them accountable for what the constituents in my city are, and etc.
Right.
Like this is not about party affiliation. I feel like accountability, it's something that is important, even more for the people that we care about than the people that we don't care about.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. And actually, I did a Core 4 on Joe Biden. So I have a series. It's called Core 4. And so basically, what I do is I just I find interesting people, and I study them, and I pick out their 4 biggest pieces of advice. And so for Joe Biden, it was a lot of that. You have to learn to listen and work with people with whom, and he says, and I quote, even with people with whom I vehemently disagree. And so that's kind of the next point that I want to kind of go into is this polarization, right? This constant arguing, this constant feeling like people on the other side are evil, they're just bad people. And I think that you said something that is key. There are bad people. There are people that genuinely have bad intentions, that want to hurt others. I completely agree with that 1000%. But I think that, we can't just assume that if I'm a Democrat, that every Republican is evil and vice versa, right? So one of the things that I have admired about you and just observing you in your posts and the way that you communicate, and also our own conversations, is that, you genuinely come from a good place, right? Like you want things not out of trying to harm anybody, not out of, trying to get something for yourself, but you genuinely have a unique concern and a very legitimate concern, like you said, about issues like, kids in cages, family separation, women's rights. I mean, because you see these issues and you see the people that are suffering because of them, and that hurts you. And so it's born from a good place. And so I think that when we talk about political conversation, if it comes from if we begin from a good place, I think that we can have a productive conversation. But what I feel too often happens is there are people out there that don't come from a good place, and they just want to see other people down, or they feel like they, if we talk about things like white supremacy or whatever, they feel like they're superior. So in your opinion, how can we start to kind of come together? We're never going to, in my opinion, ever going to be able to be completely together, but how can we start to come together a little bit as a society so that we can actually have meaningful conversations and not just leave it all up to the however many people are up on Capitol Hill?
Yeah. And well, I'm going to just start by saying, or covering the last part of the topic that you mentioned, and for me, there is no unity with white supremacy. There is no unity with bigotry.
Sure.
Unity cannot stand where there's inequality, as it contradicts everything that is trying to fulfill.
Right.
So for that part, like if you think, or if you have any thoughts, or superior ideas that you are more privileged than anyone else, or that you're better than anyone else, I'm sorry, but flash news, you're in the wrong.
Here's my question though. Do you think that people like that can change.
Yeah, they can
Because if
change, of
people can
course.
change, then in my opinion, the way to do that is through conversation, is through,
Mhm.
because I've had those conversations before. And I
Yeah,
feel like if you can present, the reality of equality, and because it's real, and just like you said, if somebody that believes that, they're just flat out wrong. But
yeah.
I guess more specifically, my question is, how can we build and create those dialogues instead of just saying, yeah, you're white supremacist, I'm never going to talk to you, I hate you, you're a bad person, done, not even going to talk to you, when
Yeah.
maybe a conversation that could be productive, and of course both people have to be willing to engage, could actually be fruitful.
I think that it's also in all is in the intent, Tony. Because for instance, like I don't think that you can hold a stand on white supremacies or anything whatsoever. When it comes to like religious views, bigotry, or misogynism. That you think that men are better than women. Whatever you think that is. I feel like you're already coming with
From a bad place.
pre yeah, exactly, and you're
Good
already
point.
predisposed or preset up to something. So for instance, let's say I personally am talking to a white supremacist because of the color of my skin, because of how I look. My opinion is not going to be taken in consideration the same way if one white person is having that conversation with this white supremacist. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And when it comes to that point, like it's not necessarily the people that are being marginalized or the ones that are being oppressed, the ones that they have to have those conversations with these people, is these people themselves, like, is this actually what I should believe, like, do I actually believe that I am superior to anyone, and what makes me think that, at the end of the day, it's not that we can't change, Tony, the way someone like things, and when it comes to this core issues, like I can have a disagreement of maybe of I like coffee and you like tea, or what kind of toppings you like on something, etc., or what places you like to visit, what is your favorite movie, etc. But when it comes to these core values, that define us as society, as good or bad people, if on these topics we are not able to differentiate what is wrong with us, I mean, I do believe that people can change,
I agree with you.
but
I agree with you.
remember that change comes from within,
Yeah.
and there's not gonna be, and that's the thing with these people too, Tony. Like in this era of information, like you're not going to, you can't tell me that you don't see how people of color are being oppressed. Like you don't see the inequality, like.
Sure.
Those things are tangible,
It's
you know what I
pretty
mean? And
evident. Yeah. I mean, you have to try hard or just lie to yourself to say that that's not actually true.
exactly, but and that's the thing when it comes to like this unity topic, and I mean, I kind of like resent it a little bit
Okay.
because there's no unity with this. It's not like, so for instance, you cannot have, like, if for instance, if your little brother, you were mad at your little brother, you might be willing to forgive him, but what if he doesn't want to forgive you? You know what I mean?
Sure. I see where you're coming from.
It's just the pride effect, on that. And I see a lot of, I like also a lot of the statistic when it comes to like voting. I Majority of men, voted for Trump. Majority of women voted for Biden, and unfortunately, like, men are more prideful. They're close. We're close in our ideals, and I mean, I feel like the unity would have to come directly from the people that are in the middle, the people that say, oh, this political game is not for me, or the ones that say like this is too much. Those are the people that we need the most, because those are the
I like
people
that.
that that are not neither in the sides of the fence,
Yeah.
and those ones are the ones that can pull the ropes to either side of the aisle.
I like that. So the point basically is, if there's someone that is already on the far, one of these extremist people, they're not going to change, right? So,
It's
there's
gonna be
not,
harder.
right. Like there's not really a whole lot that we can do there, but where
Yeah.
we can start to make up some ground is, like you said, with the people in the middle, with the people that maybe are like, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there. And I mean, I completely agree with you, because the way that I see it is there's two ways to go about this. Number one, you can go to war with the people on the other side. That can happen. Or number two, you can get, you know, enough people, like you said, people in the middle, to just see the realities, to where, you know, basically everybody except a very small sliver of the population agrees that, you know, Black Lives Matter, agrees that, you know, LGBT rights, you know. And then I think the more you do that, then the small sliver of the population kind of becomes like an anomaly. And they because the way that I kind of see this is, if you're a bully at school and all of a sudden, you know, you're allowed to bully a kid, and then all of a sudden the whole lunchroom comes and protects the kid, now you're probably not going to bully anybody anymore, right? You're probably going to think twice, because everybody agrees, the whole lunchroom basically agrees that that's not okay. So the next time you want to do something like that, you're probably not going to do it, because you know that everyone in the lunchroom is going to jump you. So that's kind of the way that I see it. But it does seem like it's very tough, because it seems like the people that are in the middle are just tired, and they're just sick of it, and they don't want to engage.
I totally agree. And I really like what you touched about that example in the lunchroom, you know, because when it comes to those people that are like in the middle, you know, there's something that is inherently wrong. You know, you're able to tell this, you know, like and that's the thing when it comes to like the other party, you know, that they say, or they call themselves like conservative, and they're super religious, you know. For me, if you are truly religious, you know, you would be following the examples maybe of Jesus, you know, what Jesus did in his life, you know. He was basically a communist, you know. He wanted the well-being of everyone, no matter your political or your wealth status, you know. He loved the sick, he loved the poor. But what is it that we have so much resentment to, for instance, like homeless, you know, poor people that have mental health issues? And when it comes to that, you know, like, what is it that we're actually believing? You know, we're preaching that we are somehow of like a higher human being because we go to church every day, or because we pray to God, or whatever, you know. But I feel like that becomes null with your actions, you know, like if you are actually pushing and for when it comes to white supremacists, it's the culture that enables that, Tony. The United States has enabled that white people are not held accountable for what they do. And for instance, you know,
I agree with you, which is why I always think about the lunchroom example.
Exactly. It enables, like, the United States enables white supremacy, and that is the reason why people are so upset. Because you can see this act, or what happened on January 6th, you know, that's a really deep topic, you know, that we need to go in. But this is not something that people should take lightly, you know. This was an insurrection, you know, an attempted coup. And you are able to see people that became like, or made what is quote unquote federal crimes. They're walking with their family back in a couple of days, you know. And then you see people, well, for instance, you know, I'm not gonna compare anything with drugs or anything related like that, but imagine, compared to those people, the white supremacists that committed a federal crime, and then you have people that are immigrating from or looking for asylum, and they're put in a cage without even a set date for their hearing, you know. So the institutions of the United States allow or give that power to white people to do whatever they want, and that's not okay. You know, we have to fight that, like, forefront. I feel like.
No, understood. And it you know, it just kind of makes me think, you know, how we can start to kind of, you know, make those things unacceptable as a collective society. And I think at the end of the day, that's the mission. You know, how do we make it so that at least most people just understand that's not okay, you know, and we're not going to allow that to happen as citizens. And so, you know, I was actually having a conversation a couple of months ago with one of an acquaintance of mine that is very conservative. Is very, I'll just flat out say it. He's a Trumper. And so we were having a conversation, and so some of these topics came up, right? And he said something very interesting. And I guess at the time I kind of hadn't seen it that way. I know that he's a genuine guy, so I kind of, even though I disagree with a lot of his points, he said something very interesting. And he said, Tony, he's like, I get it. He's like, I understand police brutality. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not naive. I know that they exist, but those issues don't apply to me. Like he has a business, and so, he's an entrepreneur. So he's like, he's more, he is religious. So, he's, the issues he's worried about, things like abortion and like tax rates and, things like that. So he's like, it's not that I'm oblivious to those other issues. It's just that they're not really relevant in my life. So I vote for what directly impacts myself and my family. And so to that, you say what?
I say that is the most selfish way of thinking. If I would be voting for something that it only affects me personally, we would live in a worse place that we live in right now, currently, right. And for instance, that is the problem, Tony. These things that your friend told you, or your acquaintance told you, that is the exact issue with what we're struggling right now. We need that people that is not affected by these issues to be talking about these issues. Exactly. And fight for those issues to not be issues anymore. So it's just really it's saddening, to hear, but it's the reality, and I appreciate that you share with me because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people feel that way. But I would really ask you to retrospect with yourself and see there's a lot of factors, Tony, that make us privileged in our lives. And this comes or starts since we were born, for instance, this person could be from here, for instance, let's grab the example.
Yeah. He's well off. So he comes, he comes from, a well-off family. I've known him ever since I was a kid.
Exactly. So this person didn't grow up with drugs in his family household, mental health issues, or his parents worrying about what they had to eat, if they had a roof over their head. He didn't have to worry about going to a school where they have to go through a metal detector to see if any one of the students was having drugs or guns. He didn't have to worry probably about drinking clean water, worrying about his neighborhood being safe or not, his neighbor being shot by the police. So you already, start ahead of other people for having these privileges, and well, quote unquote privileges is also kind of like a touch.
He has his own struggles, right? Yeah. I guess the point with him is he has no context. Like, he doesn't know what it feels like. He's like, I don't know. Like, that sucks.
But I feel like also when it comes to that, like, people are also hypocritical with the things that they say that they care, because for instance, for a guy or for a male, Tony, why do you think? I mean, I do have my stand on women's rights and on abortion, for instance, but ours is just an opinion. We don't create life on our own. Women do.
Sure.
So who should be able to decide what to do is the woman. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. Like, that's if I believe that we all have our own free will and that we will all be judged by our decisions, this is a decision that they have. And it's not a matter of do it or not do it, because I'm never going to encourage you to do it. But I want you to have a safe place if you're going to do it, or if you need to do it.
So your point of view, and the intent of the show isn't to get too deep into partisan politics, but I guess your opinion on that particular topic is, you should have the option to choose, right? At
Um,
some level, you should have the option to make that choice for yourself, and the government shouldn't impede you from making a decision as an adult that you feel is best for you.
yeah, and I would just relate or like kind of like tie that together or put it a little bit more strong into at the end of the day, like there is topics that you're going to be feel more inclined to, that you're going to try to fight a little bit harder for.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, everything is interconnected, and that's the thing, or that's the beauty. What I have been able to tie together with all this like couple of years that I've been involved in politics, or that I follow politics, and here in the U.S.,
Yeah.
and is that you every time that you're able to get it deeper or just get more information in about one topic, you will be able to see how that is interlaced with another issue and another issue and another issue. And at
Right.
the end of the day, once you're able to see the human side of things, you're able to create your own idea, of who you want to be or what you want to become, what you want to stand for.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, that's the reason why for me, it has not been defined by any political parties, because neither of the political parties defined or are even close to where I stand, my political views, my
So I like
ethical
that.
points.
Yeah, I like that. Let me pause you there real quick. So you don't consider yourself a Democrat or a Republican?
No, no,
All
not
right.
at all.
I think that is key, because the identity politics kind of tells us that if I'm a Republican, I have to be in favor of the entire Republican platform. On the other side, if I say that I'm a Democrat, then I have to agree with everything the Democratic Party says. Otherwise, I'm a fake. Otherwise, I'm not a true, member of the party, if you will. So
Yeah.
I think that is a good way to look at it, because otherwise it's basically all or nothing, right? I'm either a Democrat all in, or I'm not, and I'm shunned by the other members of my party that are all in.
But that's what I also want to challenge people, Tony, to do. Like I really don't want you to just narrow your head, or block yourself to like, oh, just because this party, checks these boxes or they support these ideas, then I am from this party. That there's critical thinking. You as a human being are able to choose or like discern, what is going to be the most beneficial. And by doing this, by following the media, by doing your due diligence of investigating about a certain topics, there's always statistics for everything, so you would be able to see or create your own opinion of what you think that is going to be more beneficial for the society, and see what maybe party or whatever candidate, is more inclined to do so, and then choose by that.
Yeah.
You are also more than welcome, to be able to push if neither of the parties have the ideas that you think that they should be pushing. That's what I love about social media right now. In this era, we're able to even troll politicians. You know what I mean? We're able to hold them accountable for what they're doing, for what they're saying. And that also creates engagement. Because whenever you see, for instance, I'm gonna just say, the Democratic Party, they do take a lot of or have a stand on the issues that are most important for me, but not necessarily the solutions that would be more beneficial for that specific group.
Gotcha.
Or for that specific solution. So my stand is not, okay, well, this is the party that at least is talking about this. Now I want to push it in this direction, so
Right.
it is actually the right direction. You know what I mean? So
I love that. I love that. And especially for people like me, there's, I don't know if you've seen, but there's all these like political quizzes on the internet. And so I've like to kind of see what party you are. And so I've done a ton of them. And every time,
really?
every time I'm exactly in the middle, right
Really?
in the middle, every time. And I have a lot of buddies who are the same way. And so it's like, we don't belong anywhere. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
I just, I agree and I disagree with like, I don't have a party. Like, I don't belong anywhere. I can't jump on one side or the other 100%. So it just feels like I'm just, an outcast that is just in the middle and doesn't belong anywhere. So I love what you mentioned, that, that's okay. And you can still hold people accountable. You can still be involved in the process without completely jumping on the bandwagon and just like, feeling like you have to accept everything that the party offers, which I feel like is a big problem on Capitol Hill, in the sense that if you're a Republican senator, you have to vote Republican or they'll like kick you out. You know what I mean? Or if you're on the
And
other
that's
side, if you break ranks, like if you disagree with your party, they'll stop funding you, they'll stop supporting you, and they'll kick you out of the party. So I feel like that makes it so hard to kind of play in the middle where we might be able to find real solutions, because the parties don't want people to do that.
But Tony, that's actually, and I love that you touched that specific subject, because that is the issue on bipartisan politics. It is always going to be an issue like that, and it's not here only on the U.S. We have
Everywhere.
bipartisan politics everywhere, and that is the issue. Like, but and this is something that is higher than just like politics. That's because when you have A or B, but neither A or B are actually going to solve your problem, what is it that you're going to choose? You're either not going to vote, or you're going to vote with the person that it might be
A
closer
little bit
to
closer.
where you,
Right.
yeah, exactly, to where you're going to. But that's the reason why bipartisan politics are so toxic, and democracy, quote unquote, because they're not actually representing
True.
what the majority of people is wanting. They're just pushing two different agendas that are separating longer and longer and longer and longer, and they're just breaching the gap even more, and we
And
are
it's the only
in the
option that we
popular.
have, or it seems
Yeah,
like it's the only option we have. So we either don't vote, or we're like, nah, I guess I hate this person less.
exactly, and this is exactly what happened in November 6th. We have two of the worst, you know what I mean? And we just have to suck it up. We just have to suck
Yeah.
it up and be like, oh well, I guess this guy it's better than this other guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
No, I agree. I agree 100%. Another question that I wanted to ask you, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who has kind of going more towards the family aspect. So he does not agree with his partner on their political views. They're very different. So how have you kind of handled that? Your wife, and now you're brand new to Club Dad. So how has that dynamic played out within your household? Has that been kind of a point of contention? Does your wife agree with you? Does she not? Because and I've had multiple conversations where that is a really strong source of conflict within a relationship when they don't see eye to eye.
yeah, no, I mean, I am really, I would say, surprised, and I would give a lot of props to all the partners, that are still together, when their partners have a different point of view when it comes to political stuff. It is really hard, Tony. I can only imagine. But when it comes to that, my partner, she understands the concepts of what we're fighting for, but it actually comes down to a little bit more than that. For instance, she doesn't, quote unquote, get too involved, or maybe she doesn't share that much information as I do in her social medias, because some of the things that she sees might be not really encouraging, like,
Yeah.
and especially right now during the pandemic, it's really hard for you to be able to find or a happy self, and imagine, for instance, if you now with this pandemic, we have been able to spend even more time with our partners. A lot of things, or that we might agree or disagree on, those are things that I mean, can have a lot of effect on the personal relationships itself.
Mm.
Uh, Thankfully, it's not the same in my personal like relationship.
Mm.
She is not as outspoken as I am, but
Does
she
she
definitely
support your
gets the
activity?
idea. She supports my activity, but I have a really strong view when it comes to police, and
Okay.
maybe she has a little bit of a, not necessarily. I just have to explain maybe a little bit better where my point
Sure.
of view comes. And sometimes we do, we have conversations about this, and there's a little bit of a disagreement, or not maybe disagreements, but she's able to see it in a different point of view.
Mhm.
And I like that, because she is a white woman born in the United States. So
Gotcha.
I am able to kind of like put her opinion, on
Yeah.
that bucket
Give
of
her
people.
your
Yeah,
perspective. Yeah. That maybe she had never experienced before. I love that.
exactly. And that helps me also to kind of like relate a little bit more of how other people that are coming from her same background,
How they view it.
how they view it or how they feel.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like what she helps me the most on is, okay, baby, I see your point, but your point might be a little too
Mhm.
emotional attached or too quote unquote radical. Maybe if you approach it this way, or maybe people thought it this way because of their circumstances when they were kids, or their economic status, where they're developed, etc. And
Yes.
so I'm able to just kind of like position myself in different ways of life, and
Yeah.
just kind of get an idea of how someone might be able to react, to a certain topic, or where their stand is on a certain topic based on those past
Sure.
interactions, or how they were able to develop in their youth, etc. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And so now something that happened for me, and just kind of to wrap up here, but when I had my son, when my wife was pregnant, I really started to kind of think of it in a different way. Because now, I would see the world in a certain way, and I'd had my experiences, and I was like, oh, this crappy stuff is going on. But now that I have my son, he's 4 years old. So I look at him and I'm like, dude, like what is this kid getting him, like what world is he going to live in? And so it makes me even more interested in, really understanding where the world is going and how things are evolving because of him. Because now I don't just worry about myself, but I also, think about him and the things that he's going to experience, the country and the world that he's going to live in, how it's going to be different to what I experienced. So you being a brand new dad, is that something that you have thought about? How is the prospect of being a new parent influenced your points of view, if at all?
I feel like if anything, it just makes me even more willing to be involved, because I want him to have a good future. I want him to have the same opportunities, that anyone else gets. And for me, this news, just have fulfill me in a way that it just makes me excited about the future. I see the youth right now, and even though we might have the perception that people don't want to be involved in politics, I feel like this generation, we have had people from in 2016 election and the 2020 election, kids 13 years old, 12 years old, on phone banks, making calls, making sure that people is registered to vote. And that's just so encouraging, Tony.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that for me, it just gives me so much anxiety to see the future, to see
Mhm.
these people growing and seeing what they would become. Great movements have grown out of kids, like the Sunrise Movement that is fighting, and they do an amazing work at organizing and fighting for climate change. It was started with high schoolers,
Wow.
and I mean, at this point, I feel like the more prepared or the more knowledgeable I am as a parent, I'm able to relay that information to my kids. And I
Sure.
feel like for me, I I'm a little sad that my parents didn't maybe talk about this topic so much because of that same taboo of like,
Mhm.
don't talk about politics and family, etc. But it is really important to talk about history and concept, and for me, just, of course, I'm excited to see my kid going to school, and learning everything that he needs to know. But one of the things that I have maybe put myself a goal to is to even give more details, or to go into a little bit deeper to what you are taught, in school, and the
Mhm.
history that you're able to learn, or how you're able to perceive things, because it's all really one-sided, when we're learning in school.
Yeah,
And we need different points of view, that enables or encourage critical thinking. And I think that's key for success. And I
absolutely.
mean,
Absolutely key.
any knowledge you have, it would be better, than anyone else not having, like,
Yeah,
knowledge is power.
it's power.
And
For sure. No, I agree 100%. And you said something key when you mentioned that you're excited and anxious for the future. And I think that is very important. I think that despite the issues, I feel like it's very important to keep an optimistic perspective.
yeah,
At least for me, I have a lot of people that I know that are very pessimistic, are very negative, literally feel like the world is going to end tomorrow, and it just kind of makes it for a darker life, I guess I'll say. So I think
yeah,
that being able to move forward with optimism despite the challenges and despite the issues, I think is absolutely key, especially, if we go into other topics, which we can talk about on another occasion, but things like mental health, depression, anxiety, I think all of those things maybe are born out of an initial sense of pessimism that the world is broken and we're just all going to burn and nothing's ever going to get better. So I love that you mentioned that there is this excitement for the future, that there's these movements, and history is going to look back on us, and good things came out of this, and we're going to keep working, and we're going to keep fighting, and things are eventually going to get better, and they're going to be okay. So I absolutely love that, Spencer. So just real quick to wrap up, for all of my listeners, young or old, that would like to be more involved in politics, be more educated, kind of form more more educated opinions, what would be your top 3 tips for somebody listening that would like to get involved in this process?
uh, great question. And I mean, I feel like the first one, I would say, and we already touched a little bit about it earlier during the podcast, is choose on a specific topic. Choose something that you, or maybe not necessarily even you, because you might be in a really blessed position that you feel that nothing is actually affecting you. Congratulations, and grab that
Mm.
as an encouragement to do a little bit more.
To
So
help
find a
someone else.
top,
Yes.
yeah. So grab that, and for instance, you might have a friend, a colleague, a sibling, anyone that you might know that is going through an issue that is related to politics, poverty, uh, health insurance, anxiety, mental health issues, etc., and just focus on one topic. Do a little bit of research on that topic and see who are the politicians or the representatives that are aligned with those ideals, and just continue to build into it. That would be my first recommendation. With focusing on one topic is going to allow you to have more concise and more specific information about one issue, and you are going to avoid, your mind going to a million places
Mm.
and not having any opinion on many topics whatsoever, or just having a quote unquote an irrational thought on a specific idea.
Sure.
So that would be my first recommendation. Find a topic that you would like to learn from and fight for. Second of all, I would recommend to follow people or those representatives, that are pushing those ideas, because that would be a really good source for you to be able to know what is actually people that are going through those issues facing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also going to help you to have a stand, and understand why is this an issue with so many people?
Yeah.
This is also going to allow you, to have good resources or reliable resources of this specific topics, And at the end of the day, don't look for a specific parties. That would be my last recommendation. At the end of the day, we are all humans. We all make mistakes. But at the end of the day is how we are held accountable for our mistakes and for our promises as well. I am a man of my word, and I would like for everyone to be a man of their word as well. So those are public servants and those are public officials. They are there to listen to you. Do never feel discouraged to request them or even demand them to do something for your constituents or for anywhere you lived. Don't be afraid. Have those conversations. It's going to be uncomfortable, but do it. You are in a privileged zone that you're only having conversations. You're not having to go through those issues personally yourself. Or if you have, you even have more of a stand on those issues specifically. And that's going to be even more impactful on people that you share your points of view with.
Yeah. So powerful. So powerful. Thank you so much. I've learned a ton throughout this entire conversation. I think it's such a critical one. It's one that we could be here all day long talking about different issues. I mean, it really is a never ending conversation, but I enjoy it so much. One of the things that I try to do is I try to, get different points of view, talk to people as much as I can. I try to have, at all times, there's some conversation going on in my Instagram DMs about some topic. And I try to learn, I try to listen to both sides, form my own opinions, get close to, people like you who are very outspoken or very educated. And so I really appreciate you taking your time to come on here, share some of those, amazing thoughts. And I think that, there is no disagreement there. So with that being said, guys, this has been episode number 39 of the Ask Tony Show. Thank you so much for being here. Spencer, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, my friend. Until next time.
A pleasure for you. Take care, brother.